Hey, what's up, comrades? We're here to talk about Highlander The Source, which is it's kind of the final movie. We're gonna review two more movies because we're saving Highlander 2 for the last because it technically takes place at the very end of like this whole series of events. But it was the second movie to come out, obviously, so it came out essentially. So the first Highlander movie pretty much establishes that there's the Kurgan and there's Connor, and then Connor kills the Kurgan, and so there's no more immortals. And then Highlander Final Dimension. Oh man, we'll get to Highlander 2 when we get there. It is like a trip. I don't remember everything about it. I just remember like it was wild, and there was like an aliens and Earth defense, and like Ramirez comes back, and like it was so crazy. What's wrong? Hold on, buddy. I'm driving. Give me a sec. But this essentially wraps up the Duncan MacLeod arc, which started all the way back in so we got 6 seasons of Highlander. Then we have Highlander Endgame. And then Highlander The Source. And from what I remember, Highlander The Source was universally derived. People did not like it. And watching it, I get why they didn't like it, but it is freaking awesome. It's so good. Bro. I would love, oh man, I'd love more movies like this. It's so good. It is so 80s for like a movie that came out in like 2004. And the real reason I've never seen it is because I was doing my mission thing for the LDS Church when this came out. So it's the same reason I didn't see Lord of the Rings, any of them, when they first came out. I saw them. I've seen them all eventually, and I've seen The Source, so that's good. So The Source starts off in that kind of like bizarre, pre-apocalyptic, cyberpunk kind of future. That was so popular in like the 80s and 90s, which is like in 2004, it was like, wow, they really like waited a while to pull this number out. And that's the show starts, and it's like in the near future, right? Near future, right? What kind of dystopian nonsense? And we just see Duncan like hanging out. There's like a red haze in the sky at night, right? So it's got that kind of cyberpunk vibe. And he just sees some like homeless guys fighting, and then like these police show up en masse and like arrest everybody or whatever, and he's just like thinking about stuff, I guess. And then we flip over to this archaeologist immortal named like Tian something, some Chinese name, and he is like looking around for something, and he's running. And then we flip over to like Mythos. It puts on these like red glasses, and he has like some sort of like futuristic looking like communication video chatting thing that he's doing with this guy named Reggie, who's kind of like a nerd immortal. And then there's another guy, I don't ever remember his name. He's Priest in the red priest guy, who's also an immortal, and he's got like the blondest, most Scandinavian like hair you could ever possibly imagine. Completely awesome. So we got all these characters, and they are looking for the source, and they're talking about the archaeologist. And then we flip back over to the archaeologist. And then we flip back over to Duncan, and Duncan's like helping some lady who's being kidnapped by goons or something. And when he rescues her, he looks at her, and the girl, he doesn't know the girl, but it reminds him of, oh shoot, what was her name? His wife. It's not Kate. It's not Amanda, like his other wives. Steve's been married like 5 times. Like, oh goodness. Anyway, so it'll come to me eventually. So he's like, oh, I want to say it is Amanda, but no, there's no way it's Amanda, because Amanda's their immortal. Like, why would they crib on that? Anyway, so Rachel was Connor's daughter. Shoot. I'm gonna look this up real quick. Give me a sec. It's Anna. Okay, so Anna, it reminds him of Anna, his like wife that he hasn't seen, I don't know, for some time. She's human, so however long in the future, this is supposed to be like 2100 or something. It's like his most recent love or whatever. And so he thinks about that for a little bit, and then we see Anna. She's like out doing stuff in like the post-apocalyptic, however you want to look at this thing. And she's like helping people out and doing nice things. And then she's having like crazy visions. She's having visions of like Duncan and visions of like the stars and all this stuff. And then we flip back over to like Mythos, Reggie, and the blonde priest guy. And he they're talking about how the stars are in alignment and something with the source. And then finally, a Chinese guy like calls him up, and he's being chased by something. And he explains that like, oh, he found the source. The source is like where the immortals come from, or what causes the immortality to occur, or whatever. And so they chat about that, and he's like, I'm being chased by the Guardian. And like, oh, what's the Guardian? The Guardian is like this force of nature, this guy with this crazy mask, and he's super destructive, and he's got like all these powers and whatnot. And so at some point, the Guardian like smashes his way up into like the room where the Chinese guy's like calling the other guys, and he's like, I gotta go. The source is something. You gotta go see like this priest in like Eastern Europe. He knows about the source. He's like an ancient immortal who's been hiding out there for thousands of years, and like even older than Mythos, who's like the oldest known immortal. These guys are like even older, right? And then the Guardian bashes in, and they have a cool battle with like swords and stuff, and they fight, but then the guy ends up getting killed, and then the Guardian like takes his head and gets his like quickening action because he's also an immortal. Dun dun dun. And so we go from there. Mythos like gets on his bike. He's like, he calls Joe Dawson, and he's like, hey, Joe, we need Duncan. You got to go Duncan and bring him over here right now to this location. And then Reggie and Mythos and the other guy, the priest guy, are all like, all right, let's go. And so they're all gonna like meet up over at this place. And they all head out, and then we see Duncan just kind of hanging out in town again, and he sees like the quickening happen. It happens on like this like kind of like Seattle space tower or whatever, or Space Needle looking thing, and the whole thing like explodes and collapses, which is baller. Like, it was so cool. And so Duncan goes up to the wreckage, and he finds the Guardian, and then they start fighting, and Duncan's like getting way overmatched. This guy's got like some crazy super speed, and it's like some real shady looking like CG, but he's super fast, and he's like dodging around and like spinning around and like stabbing at Duncan and stuff, and like it's like super janky, like made for TV movie, which this is, kind of graphics or kind of CG level quality. But it's so good. And so they fight, and then Duncan's about to get his head cut off by this guy, and Joe rolls up in like his SUV or his Jeep or whatever, and like knocks the guy over because he's not fast enough to dodge that, I guess. And then Duncan and him like yell at each other for a little bit, and he's like, we gotta find the source and yada yada. And then so he gets in, and they drive off to like Eastern Europe or whatever. At the same time, Anna is still having these dreams, and she gets a voice is like, you must go to the source, you must help, there can be only one, blah blah blah. And so she heads off, right? Everybody meets up at the monastery in this Eastern European place where the Chinese anthropologist, or no, what was he? Whatever he is, the Chinese guy was like, hey, go here, talk to this guy, and he'll tell you how to get to the source or the location of the source or something. That's as far as I could get. So they meet up and they try to go inside, but then these monks all pop out with swords, and they're like, battle's about to brew. And then this guy comes out, and they're like, hey, we want to talk to like the guy in charge here. And the guy's like, well, I'll go check and see what's going on with that. At that point, they're all kind of standing around, and then they see this girl like run up and just like climb up the wall and hop over. And then Duncan's like, hey, and they're like, you know that lady? And he's like, yeah, that's my wife. And so she hops in, gets surrounded by monks like immediately, and then Joe, the whole crew like crashes into the gate with like Joe's truck or Jeep or whatever it's supposed to be, and then it's like, all right, time to play. And then finally someone's like, stop, the master will see you. So then the immortals plus the girl, except for Reggie and Joe stay outside, but then priest guy, Mythos, Duncan, and Anna, they all head inside, and they find the guy, this immortal guy, and he is like in stone, like his body is like degraded, so it's just like his head and his arms, and the rest of his body is like in the wall or something crazy. And they're like, holy cow. And he's like, yes, behold. You wish to find the source, let me tell you about the source. And so like millions of years ago or whatever, this guy talks about how like ages ago, before any of these guys were born or whatever, him and a group of like 5 or 6 dudes and ladies, I guess, went to go find the source, and some of them didn't have like the best intentions, and it was a similar time to now, where it was like the end of the world kind of situation, and they were trying to like figure out what to do next, and they wanted to find the source to see if it would give them the power to like help the people because they were crying out in pain or something. And, so there was some of them got killed because they like fought along the way, or they didn't have pure intentions, or they had like other things going on, or darkness in their hearts, or some bullshit. And then it's so they got their heads cut off. And so finally it was like 3 guys left, and they finally got to the source, but then the Guardian showed up. And they were able to, it seems, defeat the Guardian. And him and one of the guys was like able to get to where the source was at, but then it like corrupted them because they shouldn't have been there or something. And so he got like buried into this stone essentially for thousands of years now here where the monastery is like built up. And meanwhile, his buddy got turned into the Guardian. So the Guardian guy is actually this ancient immortal who's been like converted over into like a Guardian, and he's like, lost his mind or whatever. Outside, Reggie starts to get like some vibes, right? So obviously there's something occurring, and it's going to be the Guardian. And so he goes over to, kind of battle with him, and he gets like turned up real easily. And then Joe like goes to save him before he can get killed, and he's like firing a shotgun at him a bunch of times and stuff. And so the Guardian kills Joe instead, and then Duncan and the rest of them like run out and like shoo the Guardian away. Like, it's kind of confusing. And then Duncan like holds Joe, and Joe's like, "Oh, you must go on and live and do all this stuff and yada yada." And before all that happened, I'm sorry. Well, they were still talking to the guy. He's like, "I won't talk to any of you, but I'll talk to you, the girl, because she's received the message. She knows where the source is at." And she's like, "Yes, I've been having dreams and all this stuff." And he's like, "If you guys want to go find the source, you got to follow her. But like, she knows where she's going, so trust her." All right. So then they get out there, and then Joe dies, and they're all standing around, and then they look up into the sky, and like all the planets and stars and everything are like aligning, so they're making like almost like a rainbow kind of shape, like a bow shape. And they're like, "Oh, where do we got to go?" And it's like, she's got to go there. And she like is remembering like these visions she's having. And she's like, "It's near the water. It's something, something." And so then Reggie's able to use like computer magic to discover like where exactly they need to go. And then they go on like this montage of a journey to find out the source. All right, so we get this like fun montage where we just see like fires and like ruined little camps they set up in the woods, and the dead cannibals or something, because it's the end of the world and all that good stuff. Eventually, we get to a spot where they're like camping out. Duncan looks kind of satapotamous and goes off into the woods. Reggie and Anna chit chat about. He's a pretty funny guy. We get some of that where he's like, "Oh, I'm just a youngin' compared to Mythos and Giovanni, who are both like thousands of years old, because Reggie's only 314 years old or something, like next week." And they chit-chat about like the source and wanting to be alive and doing stuff, and how Reggie kind of pretends to be like a fool because it makes it easier for him to just kill other immortals or whatever, because they don't take him that seriously. Did some interesting character building, which is kind of pointless, if you will, because then Anna goes off to find Duncan so they can boink. And so they have like a short conversation, and they start porking it. And then the Guardian shows up, not with them, but over by Reggie, and runs at him. And then they have like a short little fight where Reggie just gets stabbed a whole bunch of times, and the Guardian like nopes out. And then everyone comes over. They're like, "Oh, that's weird. Why didn't they cut off his head?" And then they stand around some more, and then someone like kicks him, and they're like, "Hey, get up." And then Anna gets down, and she's like, "He's dead." And everyone's like, "Yeah, we know he's dead. He got killed." But then mortals get back up. But no, he's like dead. Because apparently they like recall, or they talk about how the closer they get to the source, their power is like diminished. Like that's what like the priest guy said, who was like buried in stone, is that the immortality kind of gets sucked away as you get closer to like the actual source. And so now they got to be like extra super careful, because they can actually die at this juncture. And so now they're mortal, and they're like ruh-roh. So they continue onward, and eventually they get to this area where like the road's blocked off by some cars, and they take a detour. They see this guy hanging up on like a wall, and one of them's like, "Oh, it looks like he might still be alive." So Duncan's like, "Oh, I gotta go rescue this guy." And one of them's like, I think Giovanni's like, "This is definitely a trap." And he's like, yeah, I know. And so he because it's Duncan, and kind of the point of the movie here is that Duncan, and this is the point of like the series and like the other movie, is that Duncan's like such like a pure spirit, and he's so kind and he's so altruistic that's why he is like the one, right? Or he should be the one, and that's that's like a constant theme that comes up in the show. and in Endgame and stuff, is that it should be him because he's like the purest vessel and like has the most honor, and that's why he was able to like fight off the dark quickening, and why he was able to overcome Ariok or whatever his name was. So they immediately they get the guy off, but it seems like he's already dead, and then this fiery tree comes collapsing down on their vehicle, and they all run off, and then they all get surrounded by these like cannibals who are like giggling and laughing to themselves, and they all get shot with like poison arrows because they're gonna like eat them later. And then the cannibals are all like celebrating their victory over like with a bonfire and like a what's that thing called? Like the Wicker Man, like a Wicker Man statue, and like meanwhile the Immortals and Anna are just like tied up on this like thing that supposedly they're gonna like set on fire and cook them up or whatever eventually. But then the Guardian shows up and he like taunts everybody and makes fun of them, and how's it like being mortal, and they like taunt back, and then he releases Anna and he's like, you must go to the source, you're the only one that matters, and like, what about the rest of us? And he's like, get fucked. And then Anna and the Guardian like wander off, and let's see, so that leaves the three of them, and then the fire gets caught up, and then the fire gets on like Giovanni's rope. Like, this is a very poorly designed like cooking device, because his rope gets like burnt and he's able to like break free, and then he like breaks himself out, and then Duncan and Mythos are like, what about us? And Giovanni's like, get fucked. And and it's like flashback to like what the priest was talking about, how like not everybody had pure intentions, and that there was like people who betrayed others because they had other things they wanted to do. And there's a whole thing with like him having faith in God and stuff, and believing that the Guardian is like sent from God or something. Anyway, so he starts chasing after the Guardian and Anne, and then Duncan is able to like wait just like a little bit longer, and then his rope gets fired, so he breaks out, and then he breaks Mythos out, and then they like grab stuff and go, and like they're hiding in the woods, and the cannibals finally realize everyone's like escaped their like poorly conceived oven that they put together, and so they get on their bikes and their horses, and they're trying to like run around and figure out where these guys are at. And then they catch Giovanni, and Duncan and Mythos are seeing this, and Mythos is like, fuck that guy. And Duncan's like, no, gotta do the right thing, man, we always gotta do the right thing. And then Mythos realizes then that Duncan's gotta be the one who gets to the source, and he wishes it was him, but it's not. And then supposedly he goes off to die, because so they rescue Giovanni. Giovanni runs off again. They fight off some of the cannibals, and then Mythos like gets on a horse and goes to like charge at the rest of the cannibals as they're like slowly coming at them, so Duncan can go catch up with Anna. And then meanwhile Giovanni catches up with the Guardian, and the Guardian's like standing by like where the source is, all the planets are aligning and all this stuff, and he's like, oh my lord, something, and then the Guardian just comes down and kills him. So much for that guy. So Duncan finally catches up to Anna, who is like, there's like a sand pit for some reason, and this is like the same sand pit that was in like the flashback that the old man was talking about, the priest guy, who was buried in the sand, where him and the Guardian became like what they were. And the Guardian's there, and Anna's standing at like the other end, and we can see like this really bad CGI of all the planets like lined up, and she's starting to like embrace the source or whatever. And then Duncan comes up and he's like, I'll get you. And then him and the Guardian have like a pretty ridiculous battle. And it's ridiculous in the funnest way possible. Like, if you're playing like a janky old 90s PlayStation game, and it's just like the computer graphics are just not at a point where it's like, this does not look ridiculous. And that's how this battle is. Like, they're moving very fast, but it's like very poor CG, and it's very bad looking. And then they like are spinning and tossing like tornadoes at each other and stuff. And it's just as ridiculous as it's so good. And they fight, and eventually Duncan gets the Guardian to sink into the sand, and then it's like he can kill him and whatnot. And then Duncan starts having all these, and then Anna keeps being like, come to me, you have to take care of the Guardian. And so Duncan he like beats the Guardian and then runs up to Anna, but then gets pushed back, and she's like, you have to take care of the Guardian first. And so then he goes back, and they fight, and finally Duncan, after like a tornado battle, like some ridiculous nonsense, he gets him like in the dirt, and he can like cut off his head, and the Guardian's like taunting him and telling him to kill him and all this stuff. And then Duncan like has a recall of like everything the old man said in like the cave about like being pure of heart and the source, and like what it means and all this stuff, and how they paused it. I don't know where I ended. Okay, so real quick. So they fight, and then Duncan has a recall of all the crazy stuff that the guy was saying about love and compassion and being pure and all that stuff. And he says, no, I will not kill you. I accept you for what you are, or something. And then the Guardian's like, no, and he like fades away. And then Duncan runs up to, and then Anna gets like absorbed into like the planets or whatever, into the source. And then Duncan runs up and he also gets absorbed into the source. And then we see them like naked boinking. They're not boinking, but they're like holding each other, kissing and stuff. While there's like this white light, and it's like, oh, so the source is impregnating Anna with like Duncan's seed or something, and that baby is the one who will remain. That is the one who will lead all the immortals or all the world or whatever. And they're like, yes. And then we see like a baby in a womb, and that's the end of the movie. No joke. That's how it ends. The end. Wow. What an ending. Not what I expected. But it stuck with the themes, stuff that was brought up earlier. And I didn't mention this before, but there's a whole conversation with Anna and Duncan where they're like married, or like she leaves him because she wants to have a baby. And then she finally got her baby. And like the drive to have a baby, I guess, made her the source code with like Duncan's also source code seed or something, and it intermingled and made this like new baby, which was going to be like the eternal immortal and the last one, because there could be only one, and that one is the baby that they're going to pursue, you know, in my head in like a future that doesn't exist because nothing came after this. So that's Highlander The Source. So 2 weeks we got The Quickening, which is the second movie, which is like, man, it makes this movie look like like that movie's wild. So watch that, and then we'll get into the Cyberpunk. I think there's the TV series Cyberpunk Future Highlander, and then I think there's a movie. I'm trying to remember. I'll have to see if there's either the movie comes first, and then there's like 2 seasons of this cartoon, or the cartoon comes first in the movie. But we'll figure it out. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.